Encino, California. This area had been occupied exclusively by Native Americans for at least the last 8,000 years, until the arrival of the Spanish in the 18th century. Encino is the Spanish word for oak, and there were many oak trees in Encino 250 years ago. Spain launched the 1492 Columbus expedition, which established contact between Europe and the Americas. And with the Treaty of Tordesillas 2 years later, Spain and Portugal divided the Western Hemisphere for its resources and conquest. Spain's claim to the Americas was called the Viceroyalty of New Spain, commonly referred to as just New Spain. And this colonial empire's capital was Mexico City. But Spain did not explore California until 1769, when Don Caspar de Portola, the Spanish governor of Baja and Alta California, led an expedition into the interior of present-day California. Before this expedition could be assembled in San Diego, on the edge of the frontier, many men had already died of scurvy, were lost at sea, or succumbed to illness. Portola commanded a contingent which consisted of 61 soldiers, 2 friars, and other staff. Also part of this expedition was Father Junipero Serra, who founded the Franciscan missions in California. This contingent traveled north from San Diego on July the 14th, 1769. By August 2nd, they had traveled through the San Gabriel Valley, then through an indigenous settlement that would eventually become the Pueblo of Los Angeles. On August 5th, the Portola expedition traveled north from what is today called the Los Angeles Basin, up through and over the Sepulveda Pass to become the first Europeans to enter what we know today as the San Fernando Valley. The Portola expedition encountered a large settlement of indigenous peoples called the Tongva, that had a settlement called Sutkanga. The settlement had a natural artesian spring and was adjacent to a river. This area today is called Encino, and the river is now known as the Los Angeles River. 29 years after the Portola expedition, the Franciscan mission San Fernando Rey de España was built in present-day Mission Hills. The San Fernando Valley is named after San Fernando, which in English translates to Saint Ferdinand. The mission of San Fernando originally had 121,000 acres of land. That was 84% of the San Fernando Valley. Here is a map of indigenous settlements in the San Fernando Valley and beyond. You can see the San Fernando Mission and its relationship to Sitkanga, present-day Encino, and the Los Angeles River. During Spanish rule, Francisco Reyes, mayor of the Pueblo of Los Angeles from 1793 to 1795, established a ranch in the northern San Fernando Valley, which was the original Rancho Los Encinos. In or about 1797, this land was ceded to the Roman Catholic Church to be the site of the San Fernando Mission, and Reyes relocated his ranch to the southern San Fernando Valley between the Los Angeles River and the Santa Monica Mountains, adjacent to El Camino Real. The portion of El Camino Real in this location was present-day Ventura Boulevard, then known as Ventura Road. Francisco Reyes was accused of mistreating Native Americans that worked on his rancho, and in 1845, The Mexican governor of California, Pio Pico, re-granted the rancho to three Tongva Rancho employees known only as Francisco, Roque, and Ramon. The three had worked at the rancho for about 10 years. Upon Francisco and Roque's passing, their widows worked the land for several years with Ramon. Ramon left the rancho in 1849 to prospect for gold, abandoning his wife and daughter. And that same year, the widows of Francisco and Roque sold the rancho to Vincent de la Osa. The rancho that Vincent de la Osa acquired was 4,460 acres in size, or about 7 square miles, very close to the size of Encino today, which is about 9.5 square miles. This is a map, written in Spanish, of Rancho El Encino from 1871, showing groves of encinos, Spanish for oak trees, guatamotes, Spanish for willow trees, the Butterfield Overland Stage Road, from which the stagecoach made a stop at the rancho. Here you can see the Los Angeles River. When Vincent de la Osa bought the rancho in 1849, he built a 9-room adobe farmhouse that still stands today. The de la Osa Rancho was a popular stopping point on El Camino Real. By 1869, the property was owned by Eugene Garnier, who built a 2-story limestone farmhouse. In 1872, Garnier built a brick-lined pond, collecting the artesian springs overflow. Both the pond and 2-story farmhouse can be viewed and enjoyed today. The property changed hands 3 times over the next 20 years after Garnier lost the property to foreclosure in 1878. 1,170 acres of land were sold off in 1916 that would become the community of Encino, and there was further subdividing of the ranch lands thereafter. In 1949, the last remaining parcel of the Rancho Los Encinos, containing the De La Osa adobe and the Garnier house and spring, were purchased by the state of California and is now called the Los Encinos State Historic Park, which sits on 4.7 acres and is open to the public. Admission is free. There was a landmark in Encino known as the Encino oak tree. It was 210 feet south of the intersection of Louise Avenue and Ventura Boulevard in Encino. It was recognized as the oldest known tree in the city of Los Angeles, as it was 1,000 years old. In the early 1990s, the tree was in poor health, and in the winter of 1998, the tree was felled by high winds. The city unveiled an 8 by 6 foot oval slice of the tree a year later in a ceremony to honor the legendary tree. This cross section of the tree rests where the tree once stood. Here is a photo of the Encino store in the 1930s. It was located at Ventura Boulevard and Genesta Avenue. The Queen's Arms restaurant in Encino was a steakhouse that resembled a medieval castle, replete with a drawbridge, suits of armor, and tapestries on the walls. The Queen's Arms opened its doors in 1956 and was fondly remembered after it closed its doors in 1975. The restaurant was located at 16325 Ventura Boulevard. This house here at 4543 Terra Drive was once owned by Clark Gable. Hello everybody. It's June the 19th, 2024, and I'm standing in front of the house that used to be owned by Clark Gable. Clark Gable was one of the most famous actors of all time. In 1939, he appeared in the film Gone with the Wind. That film had a budget of $3.84 million, but it grossed over $300 million and took home 10 Academy Awards. That same year, Clark Gable married Carole Lombard, and they purchased a 21-acre ranch in Encino that had belonged to the director Raoul Walsh. 2 years later, the United States entered World War II, and Carole Lombard wanted to do her part for the war effort, so she helped to sell war bonds in her home state of Indiana. She raised over $2 million in one night. Regrettably, on her flight home, she was aboard a DC-3 that crashed into Mount Potosi outside Las Vegas. There were no survivors. Clark Gable continued to live at this property until his passing in 1960. His widow at the time, Kay Williams Spreckles, continued to live in the property until 1973, when she sold the house and the 21 acres. The house still remains, and the subdivision surrounding the house on the 21 acres is now known as the Clark Gable Estates.